HardCopy tonight. I speak with a multiple-term commissioner from Lagos State. Well, he's been commissioner since 1999. He's a lawyer, a senior advocate of Nigeria, a scholar and politician. Dr.Muiz Banire has served as a legal advisor of the All Progressives Congress and is no stranger to the politics of Lagos. Dr. Banire, thank you so much for joining us on HardCopy.
My pleasure.
Well, interestingly...
And Happy New Year.
Well, indeed, Happy New Year. The year seems to be happening really, really fast. And I don't know if for a number of people, you know, they say, well, they saw what happened in Lagos State as something that is no surprise. Is that the same thing for you?
Well, it's no surprise as far as I'm concerned. Like somebody rightly said, that is overdue. And I believe so too.
What were some of the things that you saw that made you think that this removal was long overdue?
Well, one of the things that you find out is that where you find that your colleagues within the House of Assembly themselves are so overtly and terribly submissive to the level of slavery, or if you like, call it servitude. You start wondering what is going on. Loyalty, no doubt, is good, but not to the extent that people are unable to reason again. I've seen that in most of the members of the House of Assembly in several public functions. But beyond that, is the arrogance in the way and manner that the SY Speaker was conducting himself. For example, the party will take a position, the governor might take a position, and he feels that that position is not in alignment with his opposition. He will insist on his own. I've seen a situation where even some members of the House during the last tenure were even barred from coming to the House of Assembly. Their offices were locked. Those are things that border on high-handedness, and certainly will have a consequence. There is also the aspect of which the members said themselves of financial misconduct, as well as other gross misconduct generally in the administration of the House of Assembly. But I personally believe that since beyond the issue of the budget and the delay of the government, is the aspect relating to the position of the state vis-a-vis the conduct of local government election. He has taken a position much more contrary to that of his political party as well as that of his governor. And by the time you're having that kind of conflict that borders on the irreconcilability, something must give way. So from that moment, I've been suspecting that something must happen. And it has happened.
So clearly, this was not exactly coming from members of the House of Assembly.
Well, honestly speaking, that is my view. I share that perception too. In fact, if you want me to go further, I tell you that in the first instance, the leadership of the House in Lagos, I don't know elsewhere, are usually predetermined by the leadership in the state. It's not the choice, really. It's not within the competence, if you like, of the members to determine who they want. The leadership actually prescribe those who will lead the House. That have been the faction for some time. So in the same manner, by the time the person now decided to go against that establishment, of course, he must expect the consequence. So I believe that they couldn't have taken such decision on their own without the leadership. By this, I mean the political party leadership itself. That's my view.
That's a very interesting scenario in Lagos State, because I mean, as people know, in other states of the Federal Republic, the argument usually is that, you know, members of the House of Assembly are usually quite loyal to the governor of the state. It's not supposed to be so, but that is what is in many instances. Lagos State, however, seems to have, you know, a different kettle of fish. So when you see members, you know, this firm and this unanimous, there'll be questions as to, you know, who precisely is backing them, or who precisely is playing this drum that has now finally resulted in what was the dance that we're seeing in the House of Assembly. The executive arm, however, interestingly, has distanced itself. They say, no, we had nothing to do with this. Would you completely exonerate them?
Oh, certainly the executive does not have anything to do with this one. That much I can tell you without fear of contradiction. You see, in Lagos State, unlike other states, the political leadership is very strong. And remember, it used to be headed by the current president of the country. So since that period to date, that leadership has been very strong. So it's not a leadership that you can mess around with. And that is why, to a large extent, even in the determination of appointment, generally, they always have a role to play. Unlike in some other states, where the chief executive of the state solely determines the fate of most of the other people.
You also gave a historical background that the speaker too is no stranger to how the politics plays out within the House of Assembly, that he's been instrumental to the removal of other speakers before now. Is that correct?
Oh, very correct. That's what is the law of karma in place, sort of.
Do you want to expatiate on it?
The law of karma. Yeah. For example, I know he was instrumental during the removal of Balumi, the first speaker, no, the second speaker, the one immediately after Senator Olorunnibe. He was instrumental to the removal before Honorable Kuforiji came in as the Speaker of Lagos State. By the time they were removing Honorable Fumita Joshua as the Deputy Speaker, he was very active there. In all those situations too, one allegation or the other was stated, but of course not proven, nor were those people subjected to any fair hearing. So the point I'm making is that if it could be part of that package and never evade those people the opportunity of defending themselves before their removal, he had no reason to complain. Even morally now, he cannot complain. So, in other words, the point is that he's getting, reaping from the precedent he has sown. That is it.
Some people said he nailed his coffin through the speech that he granted while the budget presentation was done by the governor. First, they said the attitude with which he conducted that was, unacceptable. Some people, they have been talking about how he kept the governor waiting for close to 4 hours before he allowed him present the budget. And then, the speech that he gave. I don't know if you listened to that speech. If you did, how did you interpret it?
Well, the point is that I can say to a large extent, knowing who the governor is, the personality of governor, is somebody that will be indifferent to short street. So I do not believe really that it has a nexus with what has happened. But beyond that, the speech is very rude, to be candid, and I believe it's very rude. And the delay itself, in other words, standing up the governor for such number of hours is an act of insubordination, not necessarily because they are seemingly equal in terms of the head or leadership of two different arms of government. But there is something called mutual respect. There's more something. Once you breach that rule or that threshold, then there's a problem. But like I said before, that probably added to what has happened. But before then, there have been so many things on ground that was sufficient to warrant his removal. But that probably, at the end of the day, climaxed the event that had already accumulated up to that point.
So I'm just trying to imagine a situation, and I'm very interested in the fact that you used the word insubordination. This is in spite of the fact that all three arms of government are supposed to be separate and equal. Subordination, would that really come on here in this instance?
Yes, like I said, the insubordination I meant here is in the context of mutual respect. There's something called mutual respect. Even if you are at par, even as human beings, we ourselves some measure of respect in our relationship. And I think that is one aspect. But beyond that, he said, in politics, I must tell you the truth. In politics, there is strict, it's like a regimented arena. There is serious leadership structure in politics, particularly of Lagos State. That's why you find people here and there. If you see party members, they call people easily leader, my leader, my leader, my leader. It means that you must have regard for such persons. If the members of the General Governor's Advisory Council were already seated and had to sit for those number of hours because they were waiting for somebody that they had consented or endorsed to lead the house, then certainly you must expect some measure of repercussion.
So imagine that, the governor wasn't delayed. I'm actually focusing a bit more on the speech which he gave as speaker, after the budget presentation was conducted. I don't know if you listened to that speech where he made reference to things like this is a temple, made reference to things like God's sacrifices. If you put up a sacrifice and it's not accepted, the gods might not be appeased. things of the sort. He talked about those who live in glass houses, they should not throw stone. He spoke about the cohesion of the house. If anybody tries to destroy the cohesion of the house, they will face the same fate. And then he talked about how he was trying to build the party on the stance of the mandate, etc., etc. So let's even assume that he did not keep the governor waiting. Unfortunately, he did. But that speech, do you think that was what sealed the nail on his political coffin, so to speak?
Well, like I said to you, in the first instance, if as per the governor in his capacity as the governor of Lagos State, certainly it will have no different. It will make no difference at all. Governor is somebody that I know will be totally indifferent to all those utterances. But for the political party leadership, I'm sure they won't take it kindly. They will feel that everything is like exposing. Even let's even assume there is friction or conflict within the political structure. It does not lie in the mouth of one of them to externalize it. The moment you start externalizing it, the leadership don't take it kindly at all, at any level. In Lagos, as far as I know, you don't externalize the affair, you pay for it.
So you're not...
So beyond the import, the mere fact that you externalize it, beyond even the import of the utterances, the mere fact that you have externalized and given the pressure to the world that there is a fracture within the family is enough to earn you a penalty, a sanction.
So you think this is about... I'm just a little curious, because some people have said, oh, are you saying that people are not now allowed to, say that, to voice their ambition? If they actually do have ambition, is it that they're not allowed to realize what they would like to be within the sphere of the political party? Isn't the political party being high-handedness in terms of how it's handling things?
But to the best of my knowledge, I know that this removal has nothing to do with the fact that it's ambitious. It has nothing to do. That's what I can tell you again without false contract. It has nothing. The way, in Lagos State, by now, any other follower of politics of Lagos, we know that it does not lie within the competence of a personality or an individual to determine his own success within the political fold. There is a strong leadership that determines some of these things. So whether you say it or you don't say it, or you mobilize or you don't mobilize, it's inconsequential to them. If anything, they will just be making a mockery of you. That's it. They won't go to the extent of using that to nail you. There are so many people that have manifested intention all over the whole place there that they are treated indifferently. That's it.
Well, you don't think that had anything to do with it?
I'm saying so categorically. That much I know and I can tell you.
But
it has nothing to do with his ambition.
Yeah, I also saw that you argued that, well, he was elected as a member of the House of Assembly, and that is a role that that's a function that he still has to play. Some people will say it's going to be a bit difficult when you look at, the fact that he was speaker in this same, within the same assembly. How do you think that is first? How do you think that is going to play out for him personally? And then secondly, how do you also see this playing for realignment? Do you see any realignment? Let me not just assume that you are seeing one already. Do you see any realignment of forces here? Because these same members, who removed him had been following him. You also said that they had been following him almost slavishly, as it were. So do you see, where exactly does their allegiance lie now?
Like I said to you, the allegiance lies with the leadership of the party in the state, particularly the GAC. They all always want to come back. They want to return. And for them to return, it's not so much of your popularity within your political fold in the local government or in your constituency. It's much of what the leadership consider to say that this person is fit and proper to be our nominee. Period.
Modern lifestyle requires a lot of energy, backed up by intense production processes, which impact the environment in more ways than one.
The world has realized that you cannot deal with climate change without looking at loss of biodiversity.
On Echo Africa, nature speaks and the discerning mind becomes champion of sustainable living.
One thing we want to do is to change public behavior around recycling.
Watch Echo Africa on Channels Television and find out what nature is saying.
Welcome back. You're watching HardCopy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. Tonight, we're examining the circumstances that led to the emergence of the first female speaker in Lagos State, the Right Honorable Mojisola Miranda. Dr.Muiz Banire, senior advocate of Nigeria, lawyer, politician, and activist, is our guest. Do you see a problem with the GAC, though? Do you think that it could also be a major disadvantage for Lagos, for the politics in Lagos?
Well, on a personal note, I suspect, and I want to believe so. I suspect and I want to believe so, that it could be a problem. And the reason why it could be a problem is that if they do not exercise their own mandate, or let me put it crudely, if they do not exercise their power objectively, then they could have a backlash. And what kind of backlash am I talking about? For example, let's say there is a popular candidate in a particular constituency, very eligible to contest, and maybe the GAC in his own wisdom decided to deny such a candidate, and the candidate moved to another party. You can imagine what the consequence would be. So that could negatively impact the party. So in the exercise of whatever power that they have, then they must be cautious and they must be careful, particularly bearing in mind that the GAC itself is not a constitutionally recognized body within the political structure. In other words, I mean the APC, within the APC constitution, there is no such a body like GAC there. The GAC is an initiative of the former governor and current president while he was the governor of Lagos State, just to put together some political heavyweight to assist him in taking decisions, particularly political decisions. And that is what has motivated to what it is today.
Would you say the president, who is also the leader, interestingly, I don't know whether he still keeps that role now, who's been the leader of the APC for many years, do you think he had any influence in this, considering the fact that Lagos is his home state?
Well, from the grapevine, and from my experience in Lagos State politics, I'm not too sure that he actually had a hand in this one. But the truth of the matter is that once such event happens, he hardly intervenes to upstage it. It will be different to it that, well, it has occurred. You just have to let it go.
I see. Well, I do not know do you see any implications for the calculations for 2027 with this particular incident?
Honestly speaking, maybe if any implication, it is that if there is some measure of support that the former speaker had gathered before, it will crumble now, automatically crumble. Beyond that, nothing.
Why? Why should it crumble?
Because you see, people in politics, people want to give money and offices. Once you don't have those two, forget. The office was what they were worshiping some of the people that were already around him for the purpose of his ambition. The moment he's no more occupying that office, you see them now, they wither off.
It's a very interesting scenario. I am just, waiting to. But for you, what are the political calculations that would influence, the candidacy for the APC come 2027?
Well, generally speaking, or specifically?
Specifically to the APC.
No, what I mean is that, do you mean in terms of general parameters?
Yes, general parameters.
Okay, if it's general parameters, for example, religion will play a role, constituency or senatorial district will play a role. For example, some people will feel that Lagos Island, for example, has produced the governor several times. The East has produced, West has not produced. Even within the West itself, maybe Ikorodu has produced, Ikeja has not, or Badagry. Those are the issues that will come up in addition. But the most important thing is that, in my very strong view, the disposition of the president, frankly speaking, will play a major role.
But considering the results from the last elections and how the APC lost the state in the presidential elections to the Labour Party, what implications do you see the results of that election having on whatever calculations will happen for 2027?
Well, ordinarily, if Labour Party, for example, possibly are consolidated on that day, probably it could have been a major threat. But from my observation and experience, I'm not too sure that has been built upon at all. Rather, there is sort of disintegration within that fold. So that automatically will strengthen the ruling party in the state. And again, the ruling party, to learning from experience, are beginning to put their hands together, doing some other basic things that they failed to do during the last election. And I think that is what is happening now.
Well, they say politics is always divisive. Would you say that Lagos has healed sufficiently from the, the repercussions of the last general elections?
No, I don't understand whether they are the Lagos State as a party, Lagos State government, or which one of them?
No, Lagos State as a whole. I mean, Lagos State, not talking about parties now. People were divided, yes, along party lines. People were divided more dangerously along ethnic lines. Some people felt very, very threatened within, during the last elections. Ethnic groups, came under threat, as a matter of fact, during the last elections. And I'm sure some of them will still be a little apprehensive whenever it is that the political season will approach. Would you say that, there's been sufficient lessons learned from the last elections to avoid them, to avoid those pitfalls ahead of 2027?
Well, I'm not too sure that we've been able to bridge that gap. I know that the governor has tried. He has been able to be integrating and incorporating particularly a particular ethnic tendency. I give you an example. The former Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget, who happened to be from the Southeast and was renominated into the cabinet, but rejected by the House of Assembly. You realize that the governor, in order to assuage the feeling of the people there, had to bring him on board as the Deputy Chief of Staff currently. That is part of the step that he has taken. But that does not completely annihilate the fact that that division is still there, but not as wide as it was before. And I cannot pretend that we will not witness it again, but on a lower magnitude this time around.
Well, we look forward to, a total eradication of those sort of, when I say divisions ahead of our politics. But one of the things that has come out that has been very positive about this is the fact that a female speaker has now been elected in Lagos. Lagos now has its first female speaker. What has taken it so long?
With due respect, I would say it's male chauvinism. That is it. Nothing beyond that. It's male chauvinism. Nothing. They've had several competent, eligible female honorable members in the past who could have led the house, but for gender reasons, we have not had it in the past. In fact, you can see that even this particular one, I would say, is accidental. It was not that if it was pre-planned from inception to say, okay, a female honorable member should be or will be the speaker.
So
I think that is that.
Do you think that this could...
This has a major challenge in her hand as the female speaker. Now, to demonstrate the competence, our own competence and the competence of women generally. In other words, she's an ambassador for the women folk now. If she's able to now navigate in an impressive manner, it will set a good precedent that we can now, as a state, build upon to say, even governorship at the point in time will now have to go to a woman in due course.
Yeah, but considering the fact that the GAC is the one that determines a lot of things, do you think that this could spur them to start looking at more female candidates or more female aspirants, as the political evolution continues?
I can only hope that will happen. I cannot beat my chest on that. Because the reality of the matter is that we all know that there is the affirmative action, 35% women. They've tried in the past to say, okay, free ticket, free form for women and all this. But how many of them eventually have been nominated, much less been positioned? So I believe that what should now happen is that the current speaker will be able to leverage their position, to be able to convince the leadership of the need to start looking into the women affairs within the state, particularly in terms of their competence to administer in their various spheres. If you can do that, I think there will be improvement in that regard.
Well, Dr. Muiz Banire, we have to thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening on HardCopy.
My pleasure always. Thank you.